Now, for more on Tanzania's economic outlook, I'm joined by Paolo Mauro, Senior Fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics here in Washington. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, Paolo, Tanzania was recently declared as one of 3 East African countries whose economies grew very strongly in 2015. What would you say is behind that growth?
Well, Tanzania has been growing very rapidly for a number of years. Over the past 15 years almost, it has been growing at 7% in real terms. This is one of the strongest performances. And actually, it's quite unusual for countries to have such a prolonged stretch of economic growth. We hope it continues. The sources are many. One is strong population growth. Population is growing by 2%, which is very rapid. The growth is very broad-based. Many sectors account for it. So there's no single story. There's a story of transformation away from agriculture into many, many different sectors. You have light manufacturing with simple products like mattresses and curtains. You have simple processing of foodstuffs like fish, tea, coffee. You have services, tourism. It's very diversified. That's good news. But it's also not good news in another respect, which is that for a country to really continue, at some point, they have to find a winner, some sector that they can really run with and compete on an international scale. So that's the challenge for the future.
Now, on the flip side, being that they do have such a diversified economy, how has the impact in commodity prices affected their economy?
So in the near term, lower oil prices actually help Tanzania because Tanzania is an oil importer. So unlike other countries in Africa like Angola or Nigeria, which have been hit pretty seriously by the decline in oil prices, Tanzania actually right now is benefiting. They certainly are benefiting in terms of lower spending, their fiscal deficit is improving, their current account deficit is improving. They have an electricity company whose situation is improved by lower oil prices. On the other hand, there have been very important finds of natural gas, both onshore and particularly offshore for Tanzania. And we don't know yet whether it will be possible to develop those fields and turn them ultimately into very large revenues for the country. Now, what happens to commodity prices is going to determine whether it's actually feasible and profitable to exploit those natural resources. That may be good because some people think that too many natural resources can be a curse, but of course revenues would be lower.
Right.
So that's
exactly. Now, one of the things that you also mentioned was the growth in population. And when it comes to Tanzania, by the year 2030, the urban population is actually going to outpace the rural population. What do you think that means then in terms of business opportunities there?
Well, right now we see tremendous urbanization, particularly in Dar es Salaam. I mean, Dar es Salaam has more than 4 million people. It's really a megalopolis with all the traffic that comes with it. It's a very vibrant, but there's a certain element of congestion as well. That means that you will need a lot of infrastructure to support the bigger population. The other cities are actually, as far as I know, not growing as much. So in Mwanza, Arusha, those are mid-sized cities, and the capital, Dodoma, is still relatively small. It's a little bit artificial, if you will, like many of these capitals that were set up, and we don't see a big influx in other cities than Dar es Salaam.
Now, Paolo, I do want to make sure that we get to trade. China actually tops the list of trade partners with Tanzania, according to their embassy. And Japan and India are also among the top 5, along with Germany and the EU. How do you see cooperation between Tanzania and some of the Asian economies? How do you see that developing?
Well, Tanzania has a very diversified trade structure as well. Traditionally, it has traded with Europe. It has long historical links to Asia. To some parts of the Arab world, and that has been going on for a long time. In the past couple of decades, they have made an effort to integrate their trade regionally, in particular within the East African community, with their neighbors, so Uganda, Kenya, and other countries in the region. When it comes to Asia, I think the intention is to intensify those links. It's already happening, but it's going to take some time.
All right, well, we're going to have to leave it there. Paolo Mauro from the Peterson Institute, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.